Welcome, everyone. Today, we are talking about how to organize what brings you joy and what reminds you of pain. I am Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute, and
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute from Raleigh, North Carolina.
oh, did I forget to say where I was from?
You
Carolina
did.
Beach. Carolina Beach, 2 hours away from Barbara.
Yep. Her doorstep to my doorstep is 2 hours, practically to the minute.
Exactly. I love it. So we were actually in the green room having this discussion about the title of our this is Pep Talk. I don't even think I said that. Welcome to Productive Environment Podcast, our Pep Talk for the week. And today we are talking about how to organize what brings you joy and what reminds you of pain. And this came up on our fabulously successful Paperpalooza event that we had this Saturday. We had the best time. It was about at least 20 of us throughout the entire day, an 8-hour day that we worked together with some of our clients. And Barbara, what were your takeaways from that? What did you think of that experience?
It was the height of every experience that I've done in the 46 years I've been in business, because it brought everything together at once. It was like this group of people who are all making decisions about clutter. And so you and I were there, and I thought it was such a brilliant example of peanut butter and jelly, because we're so complementary in what we do. You do the hosting part, which I'm not good at, but I love to answer questions on the fly, which is my very favorite thing to do. And so I did that. And then we had certified productive environment specialists there. We had clients there, and everybody. And what was the most amazing to me was how intimate the session was. And the fact that most of the people stayed for an entire 8 hours to work on it. It absolutely blew me away. And so I get goosebumps just thinking about it. It was really awesome. Yeah. We made so much progress. They were encouraged. My thing is she gave others hope. And it was like, wow, this is so giving so many people, including me, because I was working too. I jumped on and answered questions and then jump back and do my own work. So I got work done. It was just, it was amazing.
And I'll tell you guys the way we did it. Here's a comment from Kathy Music. She was on with us, one of our specialists. Paperpalooza was amazing. And that was the great thing. Like, I had committed that I was going to do this regardless. I was going to commit the whole day, and I was going to eat. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be the only one there at some point, because, we told our clients they could come and go if they needed to, and I would be the only one there. But Barbara was there. You were there like 99%. I think you went and got something to eat, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then Kathy was there the whole time, and we had other specialists that were there, and it was fantastic. And the clients that stayed on the whole time. So the way we did it was an 8-hour day. We were on Zoom the entire time. The Zoom was running on Zoom the whole time, and we would meet at the top of the hour. And I kind of gauged that we would have 10 minutes or so of discussion and then 50 minutes of work. But the discussions were so good that, the questions that were being asked, they were able to get help and answers to questions in real time while they were working on their stuff throughout the whole day. Now, we do an abbreviated version of that in the boot camps, live with everybody. But this was to be able to do it all day. And so then we would end up having a 15 or 20 minute Q&A, which was fantastic, and then have 30 to 40 minutes or so of work. And so it made the day fly by. It just flew right by.
And it was that brought up this topic.
Yeah, that's right.
Because as I've discovered in the 40 plus years I've been doing this, doing what I've always called memorabilia, is the hardest. It is, because all the time I'm talking about clutter's postponed decisions. Physical and digital clutter is a symptom of emotional and spiritual clutter, which is, all the emotion part. And through the years, memorabilia has always been the hardest. And it's the hardest for me. It is the one thing that I still am dealing with. And the older you get, I think in some ways it's easier, but in some ways it's harder. So that's why Andrea suggested we do this topic. And I'm excited because I suspect there's nobody who's going to hear this that doesn't have some memorabilia. But you, Andrea, this is where you need to tell me what you shared. I loved it.
Yeah, the word, I have to, and I don't know if it's a generational issue. I don't know what it is, but the word memorabilia to me it didn't really resonate with me from an emotional level. I mean, sure, but to me, memorabilia always sounds like it sounds to me like your college yearbooks, your things from high school, your high school yearbook, things, high school yearbook, things like that. Activities that I did in the past. So that to me was memorabilia. Like, what's the big deal? Maybe it's trophies. I think of Demetrius with all his bodybuilding trophies. That's memorabilia. It's in my mind. And those are amazing and probably have some emotion. I'm sure they have emotional attachment for him. But things like that, that's kind of the realm I put the word memorabilia in. What was coming up on the Paperpalooza, I think goes much deeper than that, at least with my definition of the word memorabilia. It was things that we'll start with the joy first. Things that bring you joy. Maybe for me, it's poems that I wrote through the years. For many of the parents on the call, it was that was one of the things. And Barbara, if you want to talk about this briefly, is what about all the kids' school papers, the artwork, the things like that? I mean, you had kids. So there was this whole discussion. They're like, what do I do with that? Do I keep every single worksheet that my kid did and, learning their, multiplication tables, that kind of thing. So there was that. And then we'll let's address that first. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that actually were reminding people of pain and bring us pain, because we all have those things. We all have them. And so what do we do with them? So Barbara, from the joy standpoint.
Well, one of the things that I think is really important, I want to back up just a little bit and say, as one of the things we talk about all the time, there are no shoulds. There really are. And so when people say, what should I do with this? And these papers are more personal than anything. And there is no one except you that can make those decisions. And here's what I see, what I've struggled with and what I see other people struggle with is we try to make those decisions on what we think other people would want or should want. Okay. There is the big one. So here are these papers that represent lots of money, lots of time, lots of effort, whatever. And we're thinking our heirs should want this. And a lot of time that they don't. And so you end up spending your time and energy and money doing it. So it really is, if we go back to when I was autographing books in New York, and I said to the gentleman who was having so much trouble with it, you need to decide what you want and need to keep. So I was thinking about this morning, and it's like, it's also what you want to leave as a legacy. So in my case, for example, I don't really know anybody who's going to care about all the memorabilia from my business. I mean, I have a 4-drawer file cabinet in the attic that is full. And I've thought about getting rid of it. I've started too many times. It's like, oh, I really can't. And we imply the cost. We use the cost factor. You can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price, time, space, money, and energy. The attic's up there. It's not hurting anybody. I can go and get it if I want it. And I just said to my children, when I'm gone, just dump it. There's nothing you need to go through. But I think it's really a matter of you're getting in touch with what's important for you to leave as opposed to what you think you should do. So let's talk about joy. The question is, there are papers that do bring you joy, but you don't necessarily want or have the ability to keep them all. And children's artwork is a perfect example. I can't tell you how many, literally thousands of pieces of paper I've seen, because through the years, when I first started working with individuals and families, that was a huge a huge deal. That photographs is kind of in the same
Mhm.
category. And I have a story to illustrate why it's gotten so much more difficult, and is because it's more complicated. So I remember when I first started, photographs were a huge issue. And I would go in and people would have the envelopes, because we got the physical photographs in envelopes with negatives.
Mhm.
And I would go into people's houses and they would have them everywhere. They'd be in the drawer in the bedside table, and they'd be in the junk drawer in the kitchen, and they'd be in the file cabinet, and they'd be in the closet, and they'd be in the attic. And so it's like, oh my God, I mean, this is huge. And emotion everywhere. I mean, all this stuff represents all this emotion. It's like, oh my gosh. So it's like, and I was kind of overwhelmed. Like, what do I do? It's like, well, so I implemented one of the things that is the core of what we do. Today's mail is tomorrow's problem. We have to stop the problem. So the simple thing I did was we would get, and this is when people were trying to help people do things without spending a lot of money. They weren't going to the Container Store and buying beautiful things and all that kind of stuff. A shoebox, and you took the lid off of the shoebox and put it on the underside. You would slide the shoebox into the closet or someplace that was easy, so that when that envelope came, you could write the date on the front of the envelope, put it in the shoebox at the front. And then when the shoebox was full, you put the lid on it, you put the dates on the outside, and then you can put it in the attic. I mean, it's like,
Brilliant.
and the thing of it was, it's so simple. And yet clients were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Well, the problem we now have is that we don't do any of that anymore. We get some paper photographs. In fact, my daughter does a really interesting thing. Every year at vacation, she has all of her digital photos printed out. She takes them all on vacation, and on vacation, she pulls out enough of them from that year to be a photo album for that year. So now she has a photo album for every year of her family. And her oldest son is 18 now. So there's 18,
What a
years
great idea. So that's one of the activities she does on vacation is
on
she
vacation. And
puts the photo
because
up.
she's on vacation, the family's around, which means
Yeah.
she sorts the pictures and hands this to this grandmother, or that says, oh, hey, you might like these. They're the duplicates. And then the tricky part is you got to throw the rest away.
That's the hard part.
That's the hard part, because it's stuff that brings you joy. But if you keep too many things that bring you joy, it ends up becoming clutter and you end up overwhelmed. And you mentioned athletic awards. Oh, I cannot tell you the numbers of places where I've gone in and people have had these athletic awards, especially when we started. Heaven forbid that we ever should have done this, but we started giving people trophies for showing up, not for winning, but for showing up.
Participation trophies.
Yes. So that's something that brings you joy, but too much of anything becomes a burden. And that's really what it is, a burden. So with my kids, one of the things that I did with memorabilia, we lived in a New York City apartment. We only had 2 bedrooms, not a lot of space. I'd like to say I did this out of brilliance. I did it out of desperation. We had baskets that were like, bigger than 8 by 10. 8 by 10 pieces of paper would fit in it. And there were 3 colors. So each child, one daughter was red, one daughter was pink, and my son was green. And they would put those papers in that basket. And then when the basket got full, that was one-on-one time with mom. And then we would sit down and they had to pick out their 3 favorite pieces of paper. And some of it, back in those days, we used to wrap birthday gifts with that. So when children went to birthday, we would take their artwork and use that as wrapping paper. I don't know if anybody does that today, but we did. And the rest of, and then I would pick out my 3 favorites. And then those went in the memorabilia box. And the rest of it got thrown away. And I didn't realize it until decades later, but I believe that was teaching my children a really important thing. Was you cannot keep everything that you want to without, I mean, realistically, it doesn't. But when you do, then it's a burden. And that's what people are facing these days.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a brilliant idea with the pictures. I honestly don't know. I saved things for years that I did in school, and I finally let them go. And I think I shared this on another call. I can't remember if it was this or one of our meetings, but as a teacher, as a former teacher, we saved everything. I saved everything because everything could be a craft. Everything could be a class event, a class craft. So I saved things for years, those kinds of things. And then finally, almost like just giving yourself permission to let them go. And that's where the quote, Barbara's quote, clutter is postponed decisions. It truly is. I mean, I have files still because as we were doing the paper palooza, I was not working on my reference files, but I'm inspired by our people, our clients. I am inspired to go back to some of my reference files and actually go through, because as far as memorabilia goes for me, I have a pretty thick folder, maybe two, just called personal. Now, things through the years have changed because a lot of that stuff is online. Remember when we used to get faxes? Or somebody would have the things that are memes now that you just see on Facebook and you see it and you click past it, or maybe you save it or download it, whatever, it's on your computer. Back then, it was faxes or those chain emails or whatever, and then you would print it out and maybe put it on your bulletin board and then maybe put it in a file. So I've got a file with greeting cards that were given to me through the years, and just poems I've written, and newspaper clippings, things like that. And that's great. And I go through it from time to time. So that would be, for me, that would be something that brings me joy when I go through that file. And I've chosen to keep those things. I have the space for that folder and the small amount of things that I've kept, and I am fine with that. I don't have any desire to declutter my personal folder.
One of my clients had in her business office, she had a file that she called Warm Fuzzies.
Yeah. Perfect.
And she said, it's what I put in things so that when everything goes to hell in the handbasket, I can pull it out and remember that there were better days.
Yes, exactly.
Told me that, I loved it.
Yeah. One other idea, and then we'll switch gears. Another idea that came up on our call, on our paper palooza, one of the clients gave a recommendation similar to yours, Barbara, but she had an acrylic picture frame that you could slip 2 to 3 pieces of paper in. And so she would put whatever the most, the chosen artwork of the child that particular time would be in front, and there'd be maybe 2 behind it. And that was it. So that bring the child into the decision-making process of deciding which ones were going to be in that acrylic frame. And that was displayed nicely. And then the rest, were discarded. So, say a little prayer for it and send it on its way. Greeting cards are another thing. And so I finally, when you're collecting all these greeting cards and Christmas cards and birthday cards, it's like you can still, go ahead.
Well, I just going to say, when you said greeting cards, I thought of joy. One of the things I've started doing is when I get thank you cards, I cut off the part that has the writing. I just keep the cutter, the front part, and I carry some in my suitcase. And then when I'm in a hotel or I'm somewhere and somebody does something nice for me, like in a hotel, I can leave the tip and I put the little thank you card and write it with it. Or if I, even in an Uber ride, if somebody's particularly nice, I can hand write a little note on it and give them to them. And that's just it's recycling, right? I'm taking the cards that instead of throwing them in the wastebasket.
That's a great idea.
It's just been, it brings me joy.
Everything you've shared is like just about being intentional. Everything is being intentional, having a plan for it, and intentional. So I'm going to share Kathy's comment, and then we're going to switch over to the other part. Kathy says, I keep a blue positivity folder that holds kind words from clients and also coworkers and employees from my HR days. It's wonderful when I need a boost. Yes, 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 yes. So we are not suggesting that you have to throw away things that make you happy, things that bring you joy. If you are overloaded with clutter and you have a desire to decrease that clutter, then maybe pick out the few things that really, truly mean something to you, and have permission to let other things go, so that you can really enjoy the things that you do keep. Now, the other side of this that obviously came up on our paper palooza is the things that remind us of pain. So I have to say, Barbara, when I first learned the service that we used to call the 8-hour miracle, where we would go in and sit with someone side by side, face to face on the, in their office, and we could see their files. We could see what is in every single one of their files, the names of their folders, and we would see things like divorce, or we would see things like, a loss of a home, or just painful things. Life happens,
And things that
Yeah.
nobody else knew. I mean, in my early days, I had people say, you know more about my life than any other living human being.
Right.
Because when you're sitting there going
Yeah.
through the files and you're seeing, all of those things you're talking about, it's a very
Yeah.
intimate experience. And one of the reasons that a lot of people were and are reluctant to hire an organizing consultant, because that's invasive. Can feel invasive. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons now that probably 80 to 90% of our work is done virtually, because that doesn't have to happen.
Yeah. And so what happened on our Paperpalooza for a couple of people, one in particular, um, it happened about halfway through the day. She came back and shared that she was able to let something go that she had been holding on to. And it was related to someone that she had lost. It was a death, a person that had passed away. And she was very, very emotional about it, yet very, very proud of herself for releasing it and letting it go. She's been this, and it didn't happen. It wasn't a split decision. She's been working on these emotions for a long time now. But during that process and being connected with other people and with us there, she was able to make the decision to let some of I don't think she's let everything go, but she let some parts of those things that were in her files that she was holding on to, let them go. And then others spoke up and said the same thing, the death of a parent, or for me, my pets, I was just telling you, Barbara, I'll say this and then I'll be quiet. I have I've had a file for years called either I said vet or pet, and I don't remember which one I labeled it, and it doesn't matter because of our productive environment finding system. I think it would be under vet, but anyway, our system makes me be able to quickly go to it and pull that out if I want to. Now, what is in that file, and I think I may take action on that today or tomorrow, is vet bills from vaccinations, a dog that needed a antibiotic for something, like medical receipts from the vet for years for dogs that I no longer have, that are no longer with us on this earth, or with me on this earth. And I'm like, why am I keeping these? And so now, because of, going through what we did on Paperpalooza, I feel inspired to go pull that folder out, keep one or two things that kind of stand out maybe for each pet, and then let the rest of it go. Like, that is just taking up space in my drawer.
So there's two examples. One is less is more, right?
Mhm.
Because, and I remember one of my very first clients was a hoarder. She had been a hoarder herself. Her mother died. Her mother left her 20 dressers with multiple drawers full of paper, which,
Wow.
it had memorabilia, it had stock certificates, it had all that kind of stuff. And because there was so much, her daughter had nothing to do with it. It was like, it was so overwhelming that it didn't mean anything. Or I think about my grandmother. I remember it was her 80th birthday, and she had voluminous numbers of photographs, most of which were not labeled or anything like that. And it came her 80th birthday. Well, what can I do? I went through and I found one photograph of each of her siblings, like the key photographs, and made one album. And when she was in nursing home, she lived to be in her mid-90s. And every time she was there, someone would come to visit her. The first thing she would do was show them that photo album, and it's like less is more. So when you have so much, it loses its menu. It loses its
meaning or value.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And then you described, like, when you think about the receipts for veterinary experience, like, really, what is that? It's like, how, maybe for the life of the pet, because the doctor might want to look at medical history, but once the pet is no longer there, then that's really, so it's about being intentional. And here's the thing that came up in Paperpalooza yesterday, and it's come up with every client I've ever had. I remember a story where a woman called me and said, I've moved 4 times. I have 4 boxes of papers, which I've moved every single time. What do I do with them? And I said, you have one of 2 choices. You either take the whole box and dump it out, or you go through them paper by paper. There is no sorting paper in clumps. You know, you can't pull out a pile of 10 papers and say, I'm doing. You have to do them one by one. And that is painful, which is why it's tedious. And that's why the most important thing is to stop the problem. That's what our boot camps are about. Our office transformation boot camp and our digital transformation boot camp is, first of all, you must stop the problem. And interesting and excitingly, you can do that very quickly, really quickly. You can stop that. Then once you've stopped the problem, then you can move forward. So you're in your example with vet receipts, you have 2 pets right now. So you're getting receipts. You're doing it digitally, but it's the same principle. You know, you can keep the receipts for the pets that you have now, because you might want to look back in the historical. But once those pets are gone, it's no longer there. So it's about being intentional. And so often we're not willing to look at what a finite decision. It's not easy. If it were easy, we wouldn't struggle with it.
Yeah. And I think part of it is, and it goes back to the photographs, and you said, you know, when you pick out the ones you want to keep, and then you got to throw away the rest, or you dispose of, or just, you know, get rid of. That's the hard part, I think, for people. For me, putting things with my dogs that I loved, or for people who have lost someone, and, you know, putting something with their name on it in the garbage, putting pictures, photographs of people that you love and care about in the garbage or in the shredder. That is hard.
So my best example of that was an employee. I was hired to work with an employee who was about to be fired. I mean, her boss said, you have 90 days to get this office organized and keep it, or you're going to lose your job. And so I went in to work with her. And one of the things we ran across were photographs of her work colleagues' children that she had in her, quote, junk drawer, you know, the drawer with the mustard packets and all those sorts of things. And she says, oh, I feel so terrible to throw those away. But it's like, first of all, the people who gave them to you would feel badly if it was a burden. Your friend, they were her friends. Friends don't want to burden you. So if they, that doesn't make it, you know, that doesn't resonate. Somebody doesn't. And so it's like, well, what can we do to honor them? You know, we said a prayer. She told me who the employee was, who the child was, whatever she knew about him. And I just said a quick prayer. And then we put them in the trash. I mean, it was like, so we honored them.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That makes me feel better. Thank you. That helps somebody else out there too. All right, guys, we are at the end of this. I would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. So wherever you're watching this from, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, leave us a comment, and certainly find your way over to our YouTube channel, please, and subscribe to our channel, like this video, share this video. And if you have ideas that we didn't share, you've solved the problem, or you have some ideas about what to do with things like this, things that bring you joy or remind you of pain, please do share that in the comments. We want to invite you to our upcoming webinar. Depending on when you are watching this video, at the time of recording, we have an upcoming webinar about digital clutter. It is called Less Digital Clutter, More Life, and it is coming up in a couple of weeks. So depending on when you're watching, you could go to productiveenvironment.com/webinar. If you are watching this after that, then we may have another webinar about physical clutter, paper. So we alternate those things. So either one, go ahead and sign up and join us on our webinar, and we can connect live. So Barbara, any closing thoughts? That's all I have for us for today.
Well, I just thank you for listening. And I hope that one of the things that you will ask yourself is, what has to happen as it relates to my memorabilia, whatever you think of calling it, so that I can move forward in my life. Because the main thing is, we don't want people to be stuck. Life happens. There's new things coming in all the time. So what is it that you need? And if you need help, reach out to us. We have lots of resources and we'd be happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely. You can go to producteenvironment.com. You can also fill out a scorecard, and we'll put that, actually, that'll be in the description box. So you can fill out your productive environment scorecard and get connected with us. So thank you all so much for joining us. Leave a comment and we'll see you next time.